It's an indirect conflict due to conflicting duties.
Thank you very much. So at that point, we'll ask you to leave the meeting at that point and have no part in the debate. Any other declarations of conflict of interest? Being no further, we'll move on to the next item. That's the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, could I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting on the 11th of July 2018? Moved by Councillor Davidson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tapanos. Any discussion? Being no discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
I just wanted to note that I abstained because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Could you note the abstaining of Councillor Abood as she wasn't at the meeting? Thank you. We have no minutes from special council meetings. Now I have no petitions that are in the agenda. Are there any petitions from councillors tonight? Yeah, I'll come second. Right. Any petitions from the gallery? And yes, Sophia.
Good evening, councillors. On behalf of the traders, citizens, children and those who have been affected by a car accident, I'm here to represent you. My petition against Page Street to cars has had over 1,900 signatures, an amazing effort for 4 dedicated people helping to promote awareness. Our concerned citizens who agree with us felt unsafe walking, exiting buildings with no clear vision of vehicles and being a metre away from cars with no barriers. Our aim is to keep our children, elderly people, who's with disabilities, pedestrians and bike riders who use this narrow space to be safe without having the fear of an accident. My husband tripped over on an uneven surface on a local road last year and fell down on his face. Fortunately, a car managed to stop within 2 metres of him. This trauma caused us a great deal of grief. No one should be in fear of going to work and worrying whether a car is going to drive through their shop window. Without a sense of caring, there will be no sense of community. This is a quote from one of our councillors. So councillors, this is your opportunity to show to the citizens that you care about their safety. Now is the time to restore people's faith in your decisions. You have a duty of care towards the citizens who have entrusted you to make safe and responsible decisions on their behalf. I've provided you with sufficient evidence to support our objectives. Green councillors, now is the time to implement your vision and policies for Moreland to enjoy an eco-friendly environment. Less cars and more public space is your vision. Our citizens have voted you in because they believe you can make a difference to our community and for our younger generation who will embrace it. This space will be better used for children to enjoy, people to relax and unwind, as quoted in your Moreland Livable policy. An official opening with our mayor to cut the ribbon and a plaque dedicated to our citizens to enjoy, relax and play. After all, they paid for it. We can bring the community together in a street party with music, dancing and food to celebrate the multicultural society. This is our vision for Page Street Plaza. We hope, councillors, that you will listen to the community voices and implement this for our residents and visitors and for a sustainable, livable, safe and above all, caring City of Moreland.
Thank you, Sophia. Would you like to present that forward now? And could I have a motion from a councillor to accept the petition? Moved by Councillor Bolton and seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Are there any further petitions in the gallery tonight? There being none, we'll move on to the next item. The next item is question time. This is an opportunity of 30 minutes for citizens of Moreland to raise questions with councillors. I'd like to outline the process. Questions can be submitted online prior to the meeting. A maximum of 2 questions is allowed per person, and priority is given to questions that relate to the matter on tonight's agenda. When I invite you or your representative, you must ask a question without taking longer than 2 minutes. I'll ring an alert at 1 minute 45 seconds. If you've submitted your second question, it may be at my discretion whether it be deferred until other people have asked their questions. A maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any one topic. Either myself or another councillor will answer the question, or I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer to refer it to a council officer. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, there'll be no further formal response. However, Council will action any commitments made in answering the question. Question time can only be extended for 30 minutes longer and only for the purpose of responding to questions that relate to matters listed on the agenda. If your question cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and responded to between now and the next council meeting. All right, so we'll begin question time now at 7:12 p.m. And Jennifer, I'm going to let you go first because I know there's health concerns there. So thank you very much, Jennifer Jacob.
Thank you, Mr Mayor,
You're
elected
welcome.
comrades and councillors. Current and I've written this out, so I'll seek leave to hand up afterwards. Yes. Current public policy is to encourage the installation of solar panels within the municipality. Other councils are doing the same, state and federal government. At a time when power stations are being closed down and power prices are going up, solar power is essential for our society. On this point, I would observe, whilst employees and governments have shown great restraint in not increasing wages or pensions, the power companies have been rapacious, blood-sucking parasites on our community. Public policy is not reflected in the planning scheme. The overshadowing issues come from the time when it's just about having light in your backyard. The impact of overshadowing solar panels, even 10% overshadowing, reduces the power output by 35%. Now, in the case of Melbourne City Council v Chen, it was possible to overturn this, but it shouldn't have to go to court. It should be in the state planning scheme as a legitimate ground for council to reject the planning permit. Cost of solar panels are decreasing and thus making it more affordable. I'd like to install solar panels. Can't, but I'm waiting for the price to go down. What I expect in the future is when it does go down, I should be able to put them in, but I can't put them in if development is overshadowing the house. With regards to Councillor Martin's motion, whilst in principle it's a good idea, there are a number of issues with it. What the point of having solar on the top of the development if it reduces the solar power generation of the properties around it? What's the point of having solar power on the development if it prevents others around it putting solar panels in? And the question is, who owns the solar power generated? I saw an advert just this morning on Foxtel whereby landlords are being encouraged to put it in to pay for their mortgages. The question,
Yes.
Will council approach other councils, the Local Government Association, Municipal Association Victoria, state members of Parliament, state government, to have the state planning scheme amended with regards overshadowing to allow the rejection of developments that overshadow existing solar panel installations and areas of properties where solar panels may be installed in the future? I seek leave to hand up the question.
Yes, of course, Jennifer. Thank you very much, and thanks for providing with that before the meeting as well. Would any councillor like to answer that question? Okay, we'll move on to the director then. Thank you.
Thank you, through the Mayor, and thank you very much for that question. This council has actually been very active in this space for a number of years and would concur with the concerns that you're raising regarding overshadowing of panels. Council has formally adopted the VCAT advisory notes in relation to the assessment of the effects of overshadowing on solar panels, and it's available on Council's website. It did that about 12 months ago, so now the officers formally consider those advisory notes when it's working with applicants. It's also specifically made amendments to the Moreland Department Design Code, so it's explicit about the need to consider those implications as well with overshadowing. And yes, we acknowledge that this is at the local level, and Council has been lobbying the state to actually put in a statewide policy, and continues to work with DELP, the Department of Environment, Waterland and Planning, as part of the ESD policy that it's working on and seeking for this sort of work to be included as part of that. So, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. May I be excused, please?
And of course, you can go any time. Thank you for making the effort to come, Jennifer. Good. Brian from all aboard, please. Yes, Brian. Yep. Can we give them a microphone?
Oscar, just give me a microphone.
Yeah, there's a roving mic there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Thanks, Brian.
Is that working?
Yep.
My question is leading.
I can hear it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can hear.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
it's
yep.
sounding good.
Yeah, my question is leading towards the new accessible tram stop planning around the top end of Melville Road
Yeah.
on the intersection of Bell Street.
Yeah.
It's with the way society is moving and with the things that are happening in our environment, like we're seeing that we have an excessive amount, or we're going to see an excessive amount of the group we call baby boomers now turning into their 70s. They're going to be handing in their licences, but they're still going to be wanting to go out. They're going to be needing level access. We're looking at now the millennials not as many of them buying cars as what we've seen in the past. So once again, we're going to have another group there that are going to be looking to use public transport. We've got the parents, the younger parents, that are looking for level access onto public transport. With what I've seen with plans that have been apparently spoken about with the council and with the respective stakeholders, and from what my view is, it looks like there's been a decent proposal put forward. And what I want to know is, considering that the environment around public transport is changing, more and more people are being encouraged to use public transport. People with disabilities need these trams, these low-floor trams, and a lot of other people are going to use these low-floor trams. As the baby boomers get older, they're going to have the same needs as people with disabilities, and they're going to need level access on their transport. So my question is, how much further negotiation needs to take place before we can see that there's a proposal put forward that is usable and probably the most practical that we could come up with at such short notice?
Okay, thank you for asking the questions. Any councillor like to take that question? Yes, Councillor Bolton.
Just there is a motion which I'll be moving a bit later tonight. I think we clearly need all of the tram stops made accessible and beyond that. One of the issues with the current proposal is that the tram stop's been moved quite a bit further south away from other public transport. So my motion is about shifting the tram terminus so that it is a disability accessible terminus, but at the moment it's a tram parking. Basically the tram parking's right in the current proposal from PDV. The tram parking is right at Bell Street, and the tram terminus is moved way back away from the interconnecting buses. So I think that's a big problem. There might be different views around the council, so we'll be having a discussion about it later tonight. But I think we can have something which is good, which is disability accessible, but also connects better with other public transport than the proposal that's in the agenda at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I have a similar question from Emilio. Is Emilio here? Yes, Emilio. Thank you, Emilio.
It's probably on.
Sorry,
That's all
I
right.
didn't think it was on. Okay, Disabled Motorists Australia, of which we reside in the city of Moreland, are pleased to know Moreland City Council is moving in the positive direction of agreeing to have accessible tram stops within the city of Moreland. This is of particular interest to our organisation, as many of our motorists with disabilities who live and work in this transport corridor are now transitioning to public transport due to the impact of ageing on their disability. It is our understanding there are concerns relating to the parking arrangement at Route 58 Terminus Upgrade. Moreland City Council will no doubt be aware that the Australian Human Rights Commission has jurisdiction to consider
That's not your fault.
to consider complaints of unlawful discrimination, including discrimination of a person with a disability, particularly under the Disability Transport Standards 2002. It would
be extremely disheartening to learn of any proposal or proposals that would contravene this legislation. Would Moreland City Council provide written assurance for people with disabilities there will be full access to this long-awaited proposed accessible tram stop and other accessible tram stops in the future?
Okay, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor, but just before I do, it's great to have your organisation based in Moreland, so we love having you as a part of our municipality, and thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Emilio, for your question. I would suggest that we've already given written assurance in some of the stuff that we've written in this place in terms of strategies, and certainly the human rights policy definitely determines that everyone has the right to access to public transport. And with that in mind, and also the banner that says "One Community Proudly Diverse," as the council representative to the Disability Working Group, what I know is that access is different for people with different disabilities, and from the perspective of that group, we feel like the consultation, although we're pleased to be able to be working with Public Transport Victoria to achieve this outcome, we feel like the consultation could do with a little bit more work, and certainly there are members of the Disability Working Group that would like to be consulted. So while I understand your frustration at the fact that these kind of accessible stops have taken so long and continue to take such a long time, we're very focused on making sure it's the right type of consultation that includes everybody that has a disability and all those different types of disability. So I would say yes.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll take, I said 3, but I'll take 2 more on this because I have a number of them, and then we'll move on to other items. If we have time at the, we'll go back. Tim Beaumont, please. Also on Melville Road.
That's right. Good evening,
Good evening.
councillors.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone here in attendance. Recent articles in the Moreland Leader have reported expressions of some quite widely shared frustration about processes and plans in relation to the route terminus development. Beyond this, a recent front page story in the Leader also documented and reflected some concerns that this area of Melbourne's north is experiencing some ongoing and significant underinvestment. With reference to such concerns, does the council feel that this kind of infrastructure that we've been seeing, infrastructure planning that we've been seeing recently, and this particular model put forward for this particular stop will serve Moreland well as it is now and as it will continue to grow into the future?
Okay. Well, I think part of that will be answered at the time of the debate, to be honest, but I'm happy to take any other. Councillor, yes, Councillor Farley.
Thanks, Tim, for your question. And I know that this is a very popular topic, and I think a lot of the residents are here tonight to talk about it. And I firstly just want to acknowledge how respectful the contribution is from the 2 different sides already. It's fantastic. You know, some people want it now and some people want more consultation, but everyone's putting forward their ideas and thoughts really respectfully, which is really important. In regards to your question around, do we need a bit more strategic thinking in terms of going north with that tram line all the way up to through Pascoe Vale, we've got the perfect storm at the moment, politically speaking, that is. We've got a Labor candidate under fire in Pascoe Vale. We've got 2 very big name independent councillors running for that seat. I'm sure the Liberals will want to go and the Greens will have a go too. Now is the time actually for us to be bold and actually demand a little bit of money for this and a little bit more strategic thinking. So certainly I think that will be a view that I think I'll be expressing tonight, and I'm sure a lot of councils will be looking for as well. But we do need PTV and the state government to come along on that journey. But I know that together with the respectful way that communities contribute and the way the council is looking to kind of go as well, we can certainly make it happen over the next few months.
Okay, thank you very much. I will take 1 more at the moment on this one. Nicole Hinton.
Here's my question.
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Statistics have been pulled by PTV between the Terminus stop and Brearley Parade stop. Does council agree with the essentially unsubstantiated assertion that the Brearley Parade stop is underutilised and therefore should be removed?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I think you'll find in the motion that's been moved tonight that council will be supportive of retaining Brearley Parade stop. Certainly, I mentioned last time about the consultation. I'd be surprised if Antonine College had been consulted, and I'm sure that would be very well used by Antonine College, as it was when in the days of being St Joseph's. So I think you'll find that council is supportive of the Brearley Parade, but I probably shouldn't preempt the decision tonight, but I know that that's contained in the motion. Thank you. All right, I'll move on to another topic, and if the time allows, I'll come back to the other questions on that topic. Anthony Taranto, regarding Page Street.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Vic Roads have spent $1.1 billion on improving road safety. Apart from the 10-kilometre speed limit, what guidelines did you follow from Vic Roads and OHS to ensure the safety of the workers and clients who would encounter cars without barriers a metre away from their front doors?
Regarding Page Street, yes. Okay. Would you like to answer? I'll go to the Director. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, Council consulted closely with Vic Roads regarding the project. They had input to the design and they also signed off on the project. So thank you for the question.
Okay. Thank you. T. Newing. Do you want to answer that?
Good evening. I've got a shop on Page Street, facing Page Street. I just want to know why Moreland Council did not allow me to have an input on the design or compensate me for 7 months of loss of income, and now I will have to work in fear that a car will crash into my glass shop front and cause injury or death to me, my workers or my clients.
Okay, so even though it was a reasonably short question, I think there's a few things there about input into the design, about loss of income, and your fear of what will happen if the road is reopened, I think. So, anyone want to answer any of those? Yes, Councillor Bolton.
Answering part of it, but part of it about the consultation might be better for a council officer. I certainly where your shop's located, and maybe you might want to correct me or give some impressions, is my feeling. I've visited your shop. I walked into the shop and walked out of it and saw where the cars are meant to go along Page Street. And what I noticed was that you can't see any cars coming until you step into the street. And for a driver, if cars are allowed back into Page Street, a driver would not be expecting someone to walk out of those doors because it's not very obvious that there's a shops entering onto Page Street. So, I mean, I've certainly got a view. I don't know, there will be a discussion in council later tonight, but I feel that the cars will be going far too close to the doors of the shops or the businesses. It's really two, if cars are allowed back into that street. But maybe you might want to indicate something about the visibility.
I know, because we're facing our back to the window, so we can't see what's happening. And there's the door, you have to step out, like she said, like Sue said, to see if the cars are coming or not.
I understand.
So it's a blind spot.
Okay, and I'll just get the Director to answer the part about consultation, whether you're in the involvement of in the design.
Through the Mayor, the project itself was actually endorsed as part of the implementation of the Coburg Action Plan, which Council endorsed last year. That action plan then implements a number of other policies and strategies which Council's previously consulted on and is now implementing. So it was the action plan to then introduce those works. The plan itself, in terms of consultation, was exhibited before the works commenced. And in terms of how the project itself was then managed over the last 7 months, obviously it's been closed for an extra month at the request of people who attended the gallery last month. But prior to that, council managed the project so that the road was accessible to pedestrians at all times. So in terms of the impact on businesses, it's been minimised as much as possible throughout the construction. And certainly council is responsible for maintaining and improving its assets, and it does need to have access to it to do those things.
Thank you, Director. Thank you very much, Lynn. We'll move on to Lynn from from ECCV. How are you?
Thank you. I work in Page Street at the Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria, and I've been asked to come along and represent the organisation.
Yes.
We're a peak organisation, a peak ethnic organisation with numerous working groups, advisory groups, committee groups, meetings. Particularly CALD seniors meet at 398 Sydney Road, and the only entrance is through Page Street. We concur with residents and businesses in the area that this should be a pedestrian-only mall, and we've enjoyed for the last 7 months it being so. We think there is sufficient access to car park in Russell Street, either through Munro or Harding,
Yes.
becomes Harding, or through Bell Street. We're concerned with the design and the removal of the footpath at the higher level where it was, where people knew that it was a footpath. We've got people coming out straight out of meetings, going to meetings, and we're concerned that someone is going to be hit. They're not going to be aware that they should be watching for cars because it looks like a lovely area to walk in, and it has been over the last 7 months. There is a higher increased risk of collision in this shared space, especially by community members using our meeting rooms. So my question is, what risk management strategies has Moreland Council put in place for this shared space? And I'm sorry, perhaps you've consulted with the owners of the building, but there are lots of tenants in the building who have numerous community members coming to use the building. We're concerned about their safety. We think it's a lovely space that you are trying to create, and we recognise there's other lovely spaces that the City of Moreland has for pedestrians. We'd like to enhance that space, as Sophia has earlier said. So we concur.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for the way in which you've asked the question too. I might go to the Director again, I think.
Certainly, through the Mayor, the other risk mitigation strategies that are being proposed or have been planned, certainly a street presence of council local laws officers and working with the Victoria Police to introduce this new shared space. These spaces are recognised internationally, have been in place for many years elsewhere, but we recognise this is a new thing for Coburg. So there was going to be behaviour control through presence of local laws and police. There's a temporary installation of a flashing shared zone signage as well to alert people to those changes. A camera to be in place to monitor the activity for a time as well. And new information signs located at eye level in the space as well. And regular meetings with people to monitor how the behaviour change is being handled.
Thank you, Director. Move on to another topic now. We have Stuart from Cumming Street, which is also on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors.
Good evening.
I want to say thank you very much for reconsidering the request to put parking restrictions on Cumming Street, and we much appreciate the new recommendation. But I do have a couple of questions that go with that. The signs that are shown in the attachment do not mention permit parking, although the actual wording does. And I don't know whether that's a problem. Certainly if I was there, that'd be one issue I'd be concerned with. And I was also wondering whether there was any interaction between the proposed improvement of Cumming Street with the road and the drainage system and the changes with this, because it's going to change the whole dynamics of what's going on and whether
Yes.
the parking might be a little different as a result.
Yes.
And then the sort of final piece of that is the changes to Shields Reserve
Yes.
that are proposed. I've not seen any changes yet,
No.
and whether that affects the Cumming Street changes as well. And then a final observation is at number 13 Cumming Street, there's a major redevelopment of that property, and there's heavy trucks going in and out, and will be going up very shortly, and that could impact the improvement going there. I'm assuming the council are working with the developer, but I'd like to make sure they are.
No, thanks very much indeed, and for the succinct way in which you've asked those questions. Now, because they're reasonably specific questions, I think I will go to the director on that one.
Through the Mayor, thanks for the question, Stuart. In relation to Cumming Street, the proposal is to install 2P parking, which then allows residents to get a residential parking permit, which then exempts you from that time restriction. The residential permits are only available to those properties that were not subdivided after August 2011. So that'll allow you to be exempt from those time restrictions, but non-residents will have to abide by the time restrictions. In relation to Shields Reserve, there's $352,000 in this year's capital works budget to upgrade the reserve as per a previous council resolution and the contribution by the developer. That plan will be developed by our open space team in consultation with the local community. So over the coming months, the community will be aware of and have the opportunity for input into the redevelopment of Shields Reserve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we do have time, still have a few more moments in the half an hour, so I can go back to some questions on the Melville Road. Emma, what I'll do is I'll take these questions and then we'll answer them as a group. Hello, Emma, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, how are you? Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
My question's on Route 58. The report to the council frames the residents and the community as being concerned about only car parking. This couldn't be further from the truth. My concern all along has been around achieving genuine access for our community, for people with mobility constraints, but for all users of our community. This is about not just getting on a tram, but by accessing what Melville and Bell offers in the retail strip, local businesses, integration with buses, and for people with physical disability, but also for people with other forms of disability, which affects our family. Consistent with the draft integrated strategy, transport strategy, does council believe that the proposed project sufficiently integrates to improve safe access to our community for all users, for those with mobility constraints, but for everybody else who also uses this area, whether that be by walking, cycling, public transport and for vehicles, ensures that our local businesses can continue to thrive and prosper, can 3, protect our wellbeing and livability of our community, and fourthly, allow for the future extension of the tram, which is so needed up through to Hadfield, and the development of Melville Road into a successful neighbourhood activity centre.
Okay, I was going to say take them as a group, but I think I can answer that you've pretty well summed up the community vision of Moreland in those statements. If you look at the community plan that was endorsed last year, it basically resonates almost entirely with those things. And there's the water in there if you like. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Emma. Philippa, sorry. Hi.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and councillors. My name is Philippa Rapone and I'm one of the proprietors of Pascoe Vale Soccer Store at 403 Bell Street, Pascoe Vale South. We've been trading there for 30 years, having just celebrated our 30th anniversary. This has been a great achievement for us, even with given that parking in Melville Bell Shopping Village is quite challenged, with no parking available on Bell Street, leaving Melville Road. We have, since the proposal has been put forward with regards to the new terminus, we have had concerned customers come into the store, concerned about where they are going to park, how they are going to drop goods off at our store, how they are going to pick up. We have had couriers expressing the same views. So my question to council is, Is council concerned with the ongoing survival of our shopping village as a viable shopping precinct, given the impact the proposed upgrade to the Route 58 tram terminus will have with regards to parking, receiving stock and accessibility to and from our store by customers and couriers? Secondly, is council concerned with the number of empty shops already existing along Bell Street due to limited parking? And thirdly, why can't council and its community in its entirety consider an alternative proposal which suits us as a community, as opposed to the one and only proposal put to us by PTV?
Okay. I can answer the first two, I think, and I think the third one will be answered in the resolution. Yes, council is deeply concerned about the viability of all our retail centres. We have a very active economic development department that we've boosted up in the last few years with a lot of resources, because we are concerned that local strips do survive, and it's a strip that's particularly important to my family and has been for a long time too. I can tell you that too. So thank you very much indeed for the question. Go to Troy, please. No, we're just getting towards the end of the time, but we'll try and get the two in that are on the agenda. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors.
Good evening.
My question relates to the Route 96 tram stop upgrade program for Nicholson Street.
Yes. That is slightly different. Sorry. Yeah, that's Route 96. I was thinking it was 58.
So the question is directed to the councillors. Are the councillors aware that for many years the principal and parents of Our Lady Help of Christians East Brunswick Primary School have been passionately advocating road safety and public transport improvements? And the proposed Route 96 Miller Street tram stop upgrade, which has the support of Vic Roads and meets road safety audit requirements and will provide a direct safety benefit for students if the council supports it, it can be delivered in September. I just point that out. It's our most vulnerable community members, students, can benefit from this project.
In answer to your question, I can answer that. Certainly, council is aware of Lady Help the Christians and their concerns, with Philip Casher being the principal, etc. Has had many dealings with a number of councillors. Certainly, the mayor of the day hears a lot from Philip, and we're certainly aware of that. And I am aware also that the school is supporting the proposal that's before us too. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And just a final question, because it is on the agenda. Julian Bridnell.
Mayor, councillors. As a local resident and PTV's General Manager for Infrastructure Projects, I welcome the City's draft integrated transport strategy, which states in Policy 1.3 that walking, cycling and public transport initiatives will be prioritised before car travel. My question is brief. I'm aware we're running out of time. Can the Council comment on how this policy is being applied to the matters DCI 30/18 and DCI 31/18, both being considered tonight? That's the Route 58 terminus and Route 96. Thank you.
Okay. Any councillor wish to answer that? Okay. I might ask the Director if he...
Through the Mayor, thanks for your question, Julian. The officer report and the recommendation supports all of council policies in the sense of the draft MITs and even the current MITs, and a number of our other initiatives around disabled access, etc. The officer report proposed a number of changes to the Route 58 project that was proposed by the PTV to get a better balance about loading zones and parking around that centre to assist the traders. And the Route 96 project, modification has been made to that report since it was presented last week to add some line marking, some sharrows, etc., to assist the bike movements through those stops. Officers believe that's a good compromise at both locations to support all the existing council policies.
Thank you, Director. Now that concludes...
You might have dropped off Mayor. Suzanne, I think, submitted a question earlier.
It's not on the agenda for tonight, though. So the way it works now is the ones that are on the agenda are dealt with, and if we have time within that 30-minute period, we deal with the questions that are on the agenda. That time has elapsed now, so the 6 questions that are here that do not relate to the agenda, each of those will be responded to in writing before the next council meeting. All right, so we've elapsed our time for question time now.
Urgent business item.
Right, is it regarding that? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, yeah. It's a bit tricky because it's not on the. But yes, I accept that. Okay, I will accept that because you are correct. All right, Susanna, you can ask a question. So, sorry, could I have a motion just to extend question time to hear the one more question, which is likely to be on the agenda tonight? Moved by Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Martin. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Good. So the area of confusion is that the topic that you're discussing isn't officially on the agenda yet, but I know there is a motion going to be put forward for urgent business, so I'm happy to hear the question.
Mayor and councillors and members of the audience gallery, very brief question. Is the council aware of the recent decision to close Pepper Tree Place in 1 month's time? If so, will council endorse the Save Pepper Tree Place campaign?
I can answer the first part of it. We became aware this afternoon. We have had a couple of discussions, but we weren't aware that it was going to close. But in an email I received from Councillor Bolton, she informed me that that's the case. I think she said 6 weeks, and apparently that was decided this morning. Is that correct?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were informed.
Informed this morning, right. Yeah, so the first I became aware of the actual announcement was with Councillor Bolton's email this afternoon. And so that's why Councillor Bolton has suggested that an urgent business item be put up to council, and that will probably, if that is accepted, onto the agenda, and then depending on how it's voted, you'll then be able to see whether the second part of the question is the case or not. All right, thank you.
John?
Yes, you may.
Can I just make a comment? I was well aware about 2 weeks ago that the Pepper Tree had been informed that they'll need to close in around about 2 months. So I've already met with the managers and I'm happy to be involved in any further discussions with councillors. So I was well aware way before you found out today that was the case.
Right.
But I'll be certainly fighting to ensure that it stays open.
Yeah. Well, as I say, the Deputy Mayor and myself met with a couple of people who informed regarding, actually one of them is in the public gallery, who informed us that there was, that one of the managers was retiring, and that there may be some questions, but it wasn't actually informed properly until today with an email from Councillor Bolton. So thank you very much for your question, and we'll deal with that. All right. All right, councillors, we now move on to council reports. All right, that concludes. Yes, you may.
Could I propose that we shift the number 58 tram terminus brought up earlier?
Okay, that's fine. All right, do I need a motion for that? Do I need a motion to change an agenda item? No, okay. All right, Councillor Bolton, I'll take your lead on that. And so just before you stand up, I'll just make it official by, we're going to look at item DCI 3018, Tram Route 58, request for council approval to construct Coburg West Tram Terminus on Melville Road, Pascoe Vale South. For those watching a live streaming or watching the agenda, it's on page 334 of the agenda, and Councillor Bolton is on her feet.
I would, for people who might have seen the agenda before the council meeting, I'm moving an alternative resolution. So the resolution, I'll read it out because it's not on the screen yet, that Council 1 supports the rollout of disability accessible tram stops but does not approve the proposed PTV plan for the Route 58 tram terminus on Melville Road, Pascoe Vale South. 2, proposes to the PTV that the disability accessible tram terminus be shifted to Turner Street so that it is closer to connecting bus services and disability parking, and that the design of the tram terminus be such that it doesn't impede any further extension of the tram line to Boundary Parade. that the design is redrafted to include safe passage for cyclists in this and all future super stops. The tram stop at Brearley Parade be retained as it is the key tram stop used by one of the local primary schools. 3, authorises the CEO to undertake any minor research which may assist in addressing technical barriers to moving the terminus to Turner Street up to the value of $10,000. 4, advocates to the PTV and the state government that the number 58 tram line be extended to Boundary Road to provide another north-south public transport route between the two train lines. And finally, initiates a meeting of council, Vic Roads, local residents and the PTV to discuss an integrated plan to make the intersection of Melville Road, Bell Street and Turner Street safer for pedestrians, public transport users, cyclists, preferably through the provision of a dedicated cycling lane space and drivers, and enable the participation of the Disability Advisory Committee.
Just one thing, Councillor Bolton, I think you'll find that in 2A it should be Boundary Road, not Boundary Parade.
Oh yes, it should be Boundary Road, sorry.
Okay. So that's moved by Councillor Bolton and seconded by Councillor Abood. Now, just check that we've got everything on the...
Is that the full motion that you just read out, Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, I read out the full one.
We might be.
Something missing on screen.
Right, I think we're missing the cost, the third point. Would you like to read the third point again, Councillor Bolton?
Read the third point, then
just so we're all clear.
Again. So there's an additional point, 3, authorises, I'll send you the wording, I thought you had it, sorry.
Yeah.
Authorises the CEO to undertake any minor research which may assist in addressing technical barriers to moving the terminus to Turner Street up to the value of $10,000.
Okay.
And the final point was slightly reworded as well.
Okay.
To be, it's similar wording but slightly updated. Initiates a meeting of council, Vic Roads, local residents and the PTV to discuss an integrated plan to make the intersection of Melville Road, Bell Street and Turner Street safer for pedestrians, public transport users, cyclists, in brackets, preferably through the provision of a dedicated cycling lane space, end of brackets, and drivers, and enable the participation of the Disability Advisory Committee.
Okay. Right. Now, and you're happy to second that, Councillor Abood?
Your cycling bit in the top, I can't quite see that.
I'll shift it down to
preferably through the provision of
dedicated cycling lane.
Second last line.
Point 5.
Shifted to the bottom
Shifted
point.
to the bottom, okay.
All right. Now, you have a seconder, so you're welcome to speak to it, Councillor Bolton.
Okay, well, I've been thinking a lot about the 58 tram terminus, and initially I probably was thinking that I supported the plans of the PTV because I'm a big supporter of having accessible tram stops. But as I delved into the detail, and I think also as residents delved into the detail of the proposal from the PTV, it became apparent that what it was more about was a tram parking or tram depot proposal rather than an accessible stop proposal, although obviously accessibility was part of the proposal. In some ways, the stop was going to become less accessible because it was going to be moved further away from bus stops, in fact over 100 metres, I believe. I'm also an advocate of expanding our public transport services, and I didn't want to see a tram terminus that might make it more difficult to extend this tram line, which, you know, something like 100 years ago or many, many decades ago, there was a proposal to extend this tram line up to Boundary Road. And at the moment, for residents who live in between the two train lines, there are some grey spots where there's not much accessibility to public transport. So it would really improve public transport access if we could extend the tram line. So a number of residents were talking about the fact that if the tram terminus was shifted to Turner Street, it would be better integrated with the local bus services, more local bus services, and also more access to disability parking as well. And so my motion is really, it actually encompasses a few elements, shifting the tram terminus to Turner Street, because it would be a better location for accessibility, for council to advocate the extension of the tram line, but also the final point is about having a meeting of all of the various partners to look at making the whole intersection a better environment for all users, because at the moment the intersection there is quite dangerous for pedestrians, children, people with disabilities, like all users really have difficulties in that intersection. So I feel as if there's going to be major works done in terms of a tram terminus, we might as well go the whole hog and look at the safety of that intersection. Yeah, that was my proposal. I think we should take this opportunity to do something which will be, rather than a quick job and go and leave a lot of issues unresolved. We need to do a proper job which makes the area safer. And if we can extend this tram line, that would be a major benefit for people in Moreland, especially people up the north, where if you live in between the two tram lines, it's you don't have as much public transport access.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Abu.
Thank you so much. Just one minor detail, we need to change primary school to secondary school.
Oh, sorry,
The
yes.
Antonine College campus is St Joseph, which is their senior campus. Minor detail, but...
important detail.
Yeah, minor important detail. Emilio, are you from the Disabled Motorists group?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
president of the Disabled Motorists.
Thank you.
Right.
So, I've recently been involved in some really intense work with the Engagement Reference Group, and it's made me understand how important consultation is and how complex consultation is when you're trying to organise anything, basically, that's happening in a city. There are always lots of different voices in the crowd, and I want to really commend Public Transport Victoria for collaborating so closely and communicating and consulting so closely with Emilio and the Disabled Motorists Association. But as the representative from Council to the Disability Working Group, what has become apparent to me is that it's very important that we actually consult with all members of the disabled community, because disability is as diverse as the community. And so having had a meeting with that group today, we meet every couple of months, and we did have a 2.5 hour long meeting, and it was flagged with me that a couple of representatives from that group would love to be included in a consultation with PT Vic about the accessible stop. I think that Council's in a great position to, it's kind of been outlined, provide a room or help to support that kind of final level of consultation. And I know that there are complex issues regarding this tram stop, but considering our intentions with the Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy, I commend Councillor Bolton's intention to extend the tram, and I know that is something that will be widely supported, I suspect, because we're all for public transport. And so I'm just sort of here representing one important aspect of the community which I've had a close relationship with, which is the disabled community. And I understand that it's frustrating and it's been a long time, but it needs to be right if we're going to do it. So I'm really happy to second this amendment to the council recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Abu. Are there any speakers against the motion?
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, so I'd just like to propose an amendment that we add a 2C, and that states the design is redrafted to include safe passage for cyclists in this and all future accessible stops.
Okay, is that acceptable to the mover
Absolutely.
and the
Yeah,
seconder?
I thought I had left that in anyway, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so do we have that wording? No. So just say that again slowly, please, Councillor Martin.
Oh, I can send it across if you like. It's that the design is redrafted to include safe passage for cyclists in this and all future accessible stops.
Okay, so that's been accepted by the mover and the seconder, so it becomes part of the substantive motion. Now, because this has had a large community interest, I'll take any speakers, even if so. Councillor Yildiz.
Look, I just want to acknowledge that the consequence of this is really you people. I'm looking at Tim, Emma, the Mancini guys. I'm looking at Philippa and Tony from Pascoe Vale Soccer Store. I'm looking at the various residents that are here this evening. Your lobbying of us has resulted in this, and I want to acknowledge Councillor Bolton. I want to acknowledge all the other councillors. It's not about us grandstanding and making a statement. This is about you lobbying us and ensuring that this motion, this amendment that Councillor Bolton has put forward is in fact now here before us. So I just want to congratulate you, and I know the amount of hours you've devoted to this campaign, because it was a campaign, and must I say it's been one of the most successful campaigns I've seen in the last decade in terms of how you've lobbied a range of people around this table, but also the various businesses. I also want to acknowledge Joe Piedemonte. He too has been very vocal on this issue. So I hope that you're happy with what Councillor Bolton is proposing here, and it makes common sense that why would you invest all this money now to most likely in 4 or 8 years' time scrap it and then extend that tramworks all the way to Boundary Road. So I just want to congratulate you and really thank you, because as a local resident as well, I was certainly against this from day one. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak on this motion? Councillor Thorne.
Thank you to the residents for their advocacy on this, and I just wanted to make a couple of additional points. So the position of council here is really reflective of the broader community, which is they want a review, a meeting, more consultation. They want this tram stop upgraded, but they want more input, both from a disability perspective and user perspective. So that's what we're looking at here. And I guess I kind of wanted to also reach out to PTV here in that we are supportive of wanting to upgrade that tram stop, but we are reflecting the mood of the community that it does need a review and a redesign and another look. So please continue to work with us. We certainly don't want to see that tram stop left behind and not upgraded. We want it accessible for the community, but we are just reflecting the mood of the community here, and that is we do need to take a second look at this and have a bit more input from the broader community to make sure we bring them on board and we don't have unfortunate consequences of businesses being adversely affected and residents being adversely affected and et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Councillor Farnley. Any further councillors like to speak? Councillor Carly Hannon.
I'll just speak very briefly to say I'm also supportive of Councillor Bolton's amendment. I think it's very important that we do support an accessible tram stop, and I recognise that we do need to do this in a timely fashion as well. I'm hoping that we can get some traction to discuss the idea of moving it to Turner Street, which will also get the ball rolling on a further north transport route for that pocket that is deeply needing it. I also wanted to quickly mention the parking for the childcare centre, because I do think that 10 minutes is actually not long enough to get your child into the childcare centre and then out again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Just before we put the vote, I'd just like to say a couple of words on it myself. I'm very pleased with the alternative recommendation that's been put forward by Councillor Bolton, and that I know that the councillors have all been involved in helping form that resolution. For me, it does a number of things. Number one, it reaffirms council's commitment to disability access. Number two, it calls for the super stop to be relocated in Turner Street. 3, it seeks government to act on a plan that's almost 100 years old. That is to put the Melville Road tram, Upturner and Derby Streets to Boundary Road. When I was a young person selling newspapers on the corner, it was talked about all the time in the early 70s, and it still hasn't been acted upon. So it will do that. Number 4, it also importantly recognises the Brearley Parade tram stop, a tram stop that's used by secondary school students at Antonine and previously by St Joseph's. And number 5, it's encouraging that PTV have indicated that they will honour council's decision. That's really encouraging. Of course, the Minister has final say, but I'm sure the Minister will be able to understand that council's view tonight is a very strong one. So, all right, so in saying that, we'll put it, yes?
One final.
You're not really, because no one spoke against it, I don't think I can, Councillor. Yeah. I understand.
We all agree.
Yes. All right. We haven't voted yet, so we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Okay. Well done. Thank you for that. And any other items?
Can I ask that be recorded?
Yep, you're recorded up there as unanimous. Yep. It is. All right. Okay. We'll move back now. Does anyone want to, do councillors want to deal with Page Street now?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do. I think we'll deal with Page Street then. That's DED 4918, Page Street, Coburg, Shared Zone, Strategy, Action and Response to Petition, and that's on page 207 of the agenda. And Councillor Bolton is on her feet. Yes, Councillor.
I have an alternative
Sorry?
resolution.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yes. So, Councillor Carly Hannon, we're dealing with Page Street.
Oh, yeah.
Try.
Just wait a minute. Yeah.
It's easy.
That's okay. Yes, I've just explained that Councillor Carly Hannon has had to leave the room because she's declared a conflict in that place that she's on the board of, have been an objector to the proposal. So that's why she's left the room. Okay, yes, thank you, Councillor Bolton.
So I also have an alternative resolution for the issue of Page Street, which is so I won't be moving the motion that's in the council agenda. So I'll read out my motion as it's sort of coming onto the screen. That council, 1, commences the procedures for a proposed road discontinuance of Page Street, Coburg, in accordance with, I won't read all the details of the sections, but sections of the Local Government Act, and that Page Street remain closed until this process is completed. 2, gives public notice of the proposed discontinuance. 3, appoints the Mayor as Chair and councillors, myself, and I'd like to get another nomination from another councillor.
Councillor Yildiz would like to be done. You'll be the Mayor, you'll be the Mayor.
Or maybe we could have both councillors.
Can we have a number of councillors? Does it
as
only
well?
just 2?
To hear any submitters requesting to be heard in support of their written submission. 4, sets the hearing of a submissions committee to be held at 6 p.m. on Monday the 3rd of December at the council chambers here. 5, receives a further report outlining any submissions received, including a summary of proceedings of the hearings of submissions committee, and presenting a recommendation regarding discontinuing Page Street, Coburg. And the final point notes 1, a new operating budget of $30,000 is required to fund a road discontinuance process, with the offsets to be identified through the mid-year budget review process. 2, should it determine to proceed with a road discontinuance, a further $55,000 of new capital works budget will be required to undertake streetscape works, including to close the road, install bollards, etc. And 3, in both instances, the new project budget required will need to be considered as part of Council's mid-year budget review process. So if I have a second, I can...
I think Councillor Yildiz, you wanted a second? Yes, Councillor Yildiz. That you, Councillor Bolton.
So basically, I'm moving a motion to begin the process of discontinuing Page Street, Coburg, and to keep the street closed to traffic while the process is carried out. Now, there has to be a formal through the council kind of consultation process before it, you know, and council has to respond to that consultation process before it can formally be closed. So this motion is to begin the process of consultation with a view to closing the road. I'm convinced from having visited this street on a number of occasions that this is the wrong location to experiment with a shared car, pedestrian, cyclist, little child zone. I feel, certainly my feeling is that it is, the council has done a great job with the landscaping and streetscaping of this street. But the feeling that most people get when they come down this street is that it's a pedestrian-only site. And I think to experiment with a shared zone of cars and pedestrians, I think where this sort of project works, I think needs to be a bigger space than Page Street. My feeling is because of where the plantings are located, it means the traffic is pushed over towards the side of the street where the shops, stores, or where, you know, the entries are from various businesses onto Page Street. And in my mind, that creates too much potential for danger. I think even if a car's driving very slowly, if someone comes out very suddenly in front of them out of a shop door, then there's nowhere for the car to go. If it was a much wider space, then, you know, it might work better. I feel as if this is, you know, if we want to try this this sort of design, I think we need to look at a bigger space to do that in. I feel that, especially coming out of the nail salon, in particular, that is extremely dangerous because there's such a blind spot coming out. You have to step right out into the traffic before you know if something's coming or not. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Yildiz.
Yeah, you're doing well tonight, Sue. Can I just acknowledge Anthony, Sophia and anyone else that's involved? That's another consequence of tonight's amendment. Can I just make a few comments? I actually know that corner really well because I used to work at Macca's and was a crew trainer and a manager there back in the 80s. So I know that corner quite well, and I know the business that's on that other corner. If we were to reopen that street to vehicles and pedestrians, I believe that we're going to have major accidents. We'll have people stopping along Page Street causing traffic issues in Russell Street, Sydney Road, Harding Street, and even along Bell Street. In terms of the disruption for traffic flow, as I've just mentioned there, but then also the impact it's going to have for the businesses in that area. But I want to thank and acknowledge Sophie and Anthony in particular. How many signatures, if you don't mind me asking, were collected?
1,900.
And
can I just quickly say?
No, sorry. I was asking the Mayor actually how many were collected. Yeah. So 1,900 signatures were collected, and you were certainly very strong in the way that you lobbied us. I mean, I was getting missed calls from you at about 11 o'clock at night and messages at around about 3 in the morning. So you certainly made your opinions very clear, and you did fight quite hard. And every Saturday and Sunday morning, I saw both of you. In fact, I saw you a couple of days ago again there in the corner. Sorry, on that corner collecting signatures. So you know what? Well done. Good on you. And I'm really happy with what Councillor Bolton is proposing tonight, and I commend her, and I hope that the councillors do agree with this amendment put forward.
Right. Are there any councillors that wish to speak against the motion? Okay, I'll take more for, because once again this has been had a lot of community interest.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bolton and Councillor Yildiz, for supporting the amendment to the officer's recommendation. I just want to point out that the plan for Page Street was consulted in the Streetscape Master Plan, and that was specifically about the option of creating a shared space. And so once again, we're learning very quickly, this would have been a while ago, about how to consult with the community, and I think that pretty soon we're going to nail it. But because I am a Greens councillor, and because what is I hope adopted soon and is my favourite strategy, outlines some of the details, and if you want to have a look yourself, it's called Policies on a Page. So at Policy 2.1, we are declaring that we will discourage car use, especially for short trips. Policy 2.2, we will reallocate road space. Policy 2.5, we will protect our local streets. 2.6, create a greener moorland. 4.1, recognise and mitigate barriers to pedestrian movement. 3.6, set a good example. It goes on and on. I absolutely am okay with the idea of closing this little street. I think it's a shame that when the community was consulted the first time round, we didn't have this kind of vision about what is inevitably going to happen. But for me, this street was a rat run. I used it as a rat run. Since it's been closed, I haven't been using it, and nothing in my life has changed. Nothing related to the road has changed. So I really hope that councillors in the chamber this evening support this, and I really hope that we do improve the way that we consult so that we don't have this scenario where we think we're endeavouring to do something and it turns out to be not what the community wants. So we rely on all of you to let us know what we should be doing so that we can do it.
Yeah. No worries. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. I will speak briefly because I concur with what has been said. But just also say thank you and well done to officers for those works. They look fantastic in Page Street. And of course, thank you to the residents and shop owners of the precinct as well. It's good to hear your voices and to have so much support from the community. And I have no doubt that has informed councillors and certainly had an impact on this decision tonight. My view always is you create better places if you can remove vehicles and pedestrianise places, beautify places, put in trees and landscaping and public art and all of that, particularly in our activity centres such as Coburg. And I do think that there is significant traffic benefits as well from actually blocking that road, not having access to Sydney Road and not having it being used. And diverting the roads to to Harding and the other streets. So I think it is a great idea. I think people have spoken loud and clear, and I'll be fully supporting us investigating that. So I say investigating it because there is an official process that we need to go by. So now we will start consulting you officially about closing the road if this motion is successful tonight. And it's important that we actually undertake that official process. So we would love for you to continue to engage and put in submissions because tonight, if this motion is successful, we are only beginning the process. So I think that was important to say. But look, I think it's a great idea and we should be investigating, and I'm hopeful of listening to the community now more broadly and look forward to a future decision on this road in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Any other councillors wish to speak in this debate? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously as well.
Thank you so much. I
No
know
worries.
I bombarded you with a lot of information at all times at night, but it was worth
Thank
it.
you. We're in a formal meeting now. So we're going back to the first council report. We're going back to DCI 2518. Just waiting for councillors. Okay, well, we're still in a formal meeting, councillors. Hang on. Councillor Carly Hannon, making way. Okay. We've got DCI 2518, Draft Waste and Litter Strategy 2018, released for consultation, and Councillor Martin is on his feet.
Thank you. I would like to move a slight amendment to the report as listed tonight, and I have circulated that around to councillors, and if I do have a seconder, I'd like to speak to that a little bit.
Yes, Councillor Dorney is seconding, so we've got Councillor Martin, Councillor Dorney. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. So I would like to start by stating that I really do thank the officers for putting this work together. I think it really does incorporate a lot of the elements of my notice of motion that we put forward a couple of months ago. It really does really have that visionary element here in Moreland. We're looking for towards a goal of zero waste to landfill by the year 2030, and it's something that we're really looking forward to accelerate and encourage recycling as a priority in our municipality. So I'd just like to touch on some of the slight amendments that I'll be inserting into this motion, and really it does talk to some of the wording in there, aligning us with some of our state and federal strategies. I do note that Labor and Liberal politicians did vote down a container deposit legislation today. So we will be proceeding with our own measures that we can do in that space. I do note that there is some really excellent work in the state government recycling industry strategic plan. And so we'll be including some of the references in there, especially their plans for a circular economy plan. Also looking forward to linking some of the federal Senate recommendations around banning single-use plastics by the year 2023, and also looking forward to including the federal government commitment for all packaging to be 100% recycled and diverted from landfill by the year 2025, which is 5 years before our 2030 strategy. So really, I'd really like to touch on and really state that as a council, we spend so much money on waste and litter. We spend close to $1 million a year cleaning up litter from our city, and we spend millions of dollars each year on waste contracts. What this motion does is it seeks to move us away from landfilling and push us closer towards recycling. What that does is not only provides a significant environmental benefit, but it also provides a significant financial benefit to council, and it's something that's often underrated and really isn't spoken about. And it's something that I really do want to emphasise, that fact that this is not just the environmentally best option, but also the financially best option for us as a council. And so, in summary, I really do hope that my fellow councillors support my amendments, and we put this out to the community and we hear from the community, because it's really important that the community feeds into this strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thorne.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Martin. I completely concur. Super excited by this strategy. It's such a flagship strategy and a real opportunity to both save money for our council, improve connection for our community, grow better food, reduce waste to landfill, and actually create a business and economy. There's huge challenges that we face, but I think within those challenges is huge opportunity, and that's one of the reasons I get out of bed in the morning. Hugely motivated by this topic, really excited about what this can do for our community, and really excited about what our community has to say about it. So I think that the strategy itself, it reads really well. I think the officers have done a fabulous job. I do think that Councillor Martin's amendments just take it a little bit further in terms of really being able to achieve our zero waste to landfill goal by 2030. So yeah, looking forward to what the community have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne.
John, can I say something?
Yes, you can, Councillor Yildiz.
Can I just say, I certainly don't get out of bed with that excited as much as you are, Councillor Thorne, about this. But can I just say, I want to commend you, Dale, because this is what's needed, not just in local government, but also in state. And I was really shocked to hear the Parliament today voting down the container deposit scheme, still yet the only state in this mainland Australia or territory that doesn't have it. Baffles me when this was done nearly 45, 50 years ago in South Australia. This is about macro planning. This is really about you not pushing the Greens agenda. This is just a sensible motion you're putting forward tonight. So I just want to say, well done, mate. It is. It's not just the environmental benefits, but what about all the financial benefits that this will give council? And it yet again puts us back on the map. We always have been on the map, but in terms of being the city that really is at the forefront of sustainability. So good on you, mate. I'm disappointed I had to leave the chamber because I was really keen to second this, but good on you. Really want to say well done.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Abood.
Okay, so this is something that is incorporated in the council plan. As a councillor that was elected on a Greens platform, I am required to push a Greens agenda. So I'm quite pleased to hear that this particular council has, and the officers behind us have managed to pull this really ambitious piece of work together, and I have absolutely no hesitation supporting it. Once again, this is a draft. It's going out for consultation to the community. So we are engaged with the residents in this city, the ratepayers. We have been accused of being responsible for rates, roads and rubbish. Well, this is our time to shine on the rubbish bit. And this is what we're endeavouring to do here. It's ambitious and brave, and a significant part of the success of the strategy is about behaviour change. Everybody who's anybody is talking about the war on waste, and the China sword policy is probably one of the best things that could have happened, to the whole country, because we are finally faced with a situation where we need to face up to our rubbish. We need to reduce the levels of consumption for the rubbish that we make. And we need to find more productive ways to deal with it so that we can turn the things that we're throwing away into something else, or whether it's recycled furniture or dirt for the gardens. There's so many actions in the draft strategy that I love, and I really hope that my fellow councillors will support it. And I can't commend Councillor Martin enough for his work, and feel a little bit like, what was I doing while he was doing all of that stuff? So well done to you.
Thank you. Okay, any other councillors? Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is pleasing to be able to see this piece of work developed and be able to put it out to consultation. There is no doubt that this is core business. This is not just a Greens agenda or a Labor agenda, but this is the core business of the council, and this is what most residents, I believe, get irate when we don't get it right. It is the little things that matter in their neighbourhood. It's the dumped rubbish, it's the litter, it is the key service that we provide, our curbside collection and our hard waste collection. So I guess I'm really hoping that the community will engage, because I do think we have a problem in the city, and we're not the only ones, of course, but particularly in the South Ward, where we have a very transient community, we have a very vibrant shopping strip. We have a problem with litter. We have a problem with dump rubbish, and we need to start addressing those issues. And we need to start saying, because of our population densities, the service level that has been okay so far is probably not enough and needs to improve. And I'm really hopeful that the community would echo some of those sentiments. And I'm certainly keen to have a look at what innovative ideas come from the consultation period and come from this piece of work, because we constantly need to be doing better in this space. More people, more restaurants, more takeaway places, more shops means more litter, and it means that more transient population means more dumped rubbish, potentially. So we need to ensure that we are doing this well. I know our figures for collection or for dumped rubbish have just gone through the roof over the last 3 or 4 years, so we're collecting a lot more. But it is time that we started to say, why are people leaving their furniture on the nature strip? That is not acceptable. That is dumped rubbish, and it's costing our community, it's costing you as ratepayers and our council money to send people to go pick that up and take it to the tip. So I'm looking forward to an education campaign, but I'm looking forward to making sure that the message does get through, and we will be happy to do our bit by investing more in such a core service.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Any other speakers on this? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I think we might move forward to the last item on the agenda, only because I see there's some people in the public gallery, and it is that's the item, the last of the items before the notice of motion.
96.
Yeah, that's
96
the,
tram.
yes, it's DCI 3118 Yarra Trams Route 96 Tram Improvement Project,
Yep.
Nicholson Street, Brunswick East. Okay, and Councillor Martin is on his feet.
So I would like to move an alternative motion to this item that was circulated around to councillors earlier. And if I have a seconder, I'm happy to talk to it.
I've had Councillor Dorney's hand up the whole way through, so I'll go to Councillor Dorney, but you'll get to speak to it. Councillor Martin, yes?
Yep. So essentially, what we have here in these tram stops is designs that do not consider cyclists in our city. What we have is Brunswick has 12% of all Brunswick residents commute every day on their bicycle.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for a minute. So your resolution is that correct, the one that's on the floor?
So my
Hang on.
So my
We'll just wait.
alternative
Yeah, we'll just wait.
is that Council 1 will not support the Route 96 improvement project until there is provision made in the design for a dedicated cycle lane, and 2 seeks proposals from PTV and Vic Roads for the provision of a dedicated cycle lane in the design.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we'll just wait till it comes up on the screen because that's quite different to the officer recommendation. And you were comfortable in seconding that, Councillor Dorney? You're aware that you're seconding that motion? Okay. We'll just wait till it comes up on the screen. Is that correct, what's on the screen?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Now you may begin speaking again.
Thank you. So the rationale for moving this motion is that 12% of Brunswick residents are cyclists. The state average is 1.2%. Therefore, in Brunswick, we have a 1,000% increase on the number of cyclists than we do across the state. What we have is we have a situation where we must do everything we can to protect the safety of the huge volume of cyclists that we have in our city. We have on Nicholson and Blythe Street what is quite literally a death trap for any cyclist riding around that bend. It does not take into account the fact that these people ride through that intersection and quite frankly risk their life going through it. I've seen so many near misses in and around that super stop. What we need to do as a council is prevent anything like that going in that puts these huge amount of commuters at risk. As a council, we have a responsibility, and safety should be our primary responsibility when approving any design. And unfortunately, this proposal doesn't even consider it. And I realise that officers have come back to us a month later doing what they can without having the designs changed at all. And I recognise that it is a difficult process for us as council not being able to put forward new designs. But as far as safety is concerned, having a bicycle painted on the ground and then seeing the cars and bicycles merge together is not an adequate response. And I think as a council, we have a responsibility and we need to really lead and take that responsibility. And I fully support the rollout of accessible stops and super stops across our entire city. I believe every single tram stop should be fully accessible, but we can't be putting these in and risking lives at the same time, because the number of cyclists that are dying in our city is at the hands of poor design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dorney as a seconder.
Yes, I have, a lot of the comments Councillor Martin has made. I would like to recognise and acknowledge the officers have gone back and tried to negotiate a better outcome. I also just would like to also reiterate that it just doesn't stack up. As a local East Brunswick woman who rides around the streets daily, which is already an anomaly in itself. I do ride on Nicholson Street. I know that there are other paths that I can and you know, from a safety perspective, probably should use, but it's also a convenience, and we shouldn't have to be compromised and shunned to, you know, adding, you know, an extra 10, 15 minutes to our trip just because the road, the main road isn't safe. So I think that we do need to do better. We can do better, and as a council, we need to be pushing that as far as we can for Nicholson Street.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Before you speak, any speakers against the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And look, this is a difficult one, but I do believe that the correct approach would actually be not to say no to the endorsed plans, but to work with them more and try to get the best possible outcome for cyclists. And our officers are doing that. And there is that discussion that is going to occur. And I've noted that since that time, there have been some improvements. This one, it's always difficult to try to accommodate the best outcome for everyone. But I think this is one where we can find a solution. You know, super stops, and we've heard today, just disability accessible stops are important. Now, I was very supportive of the previous resolution to not support the 58 tram line, because I think a better outcome, but it's way more significant with the potential extension of the line. When you weigh up that potential future benefit with a delay in the super stop, that is worth it. But here I think that we should not be delaying. We should be working with Vic Track and Vic Roads and getting the best possible outcome that we could find, not saying no. And, you know, it's always disheartening to hear people say, I support super stops, but, and always find a reason to delay, to have more consultation, to make sure they don't happen. And you know, you hear it, you know, amongst other sort of debates where I support this, but, and you know, it's time to get to that kind of rhetoric here. And I'm like, why don't we actually be a bit more visionary, be more proactive, more productive, and say, let's work together, let's support your plans, and let's see what is the best possible outcome, recognising that my ideal outcome may not just be possible, but what is the best we can do to actually get these projects moving? Because the longer we wait, the more people who can't get on our public transport system, and that's not fair, and that should be our priority.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Boot.
Yes, I'm rising to support the amended motion, and I wear a couple of hats. I wear three hats really on this one because I have a young family, so I understand the perils of transporting a young family around the neighbourhood and what the options are realistically for that. But also, as you've heard, my disability working group representation means I have an obligation to really try and keep the value in the relationship that we have with PTVIC and how important it is that we do make sure that these accessible stops do happen in the city so that people can everybody can access public transport. But I also am here fully supporting the latest strategy we've put out for draft, and I have a lot of issues about being able to support the tram stop, which actually speaks against lots and lots of the policies in the draft, because it's kind of like being the cow that fills the bucket with milk and then kicks it over. And so once again, I'm going to alert my fellow councillors to the policies that are in the draft that has been accepted for public submission. Policy 1.2, make cycling an obvious choice of travel in Moreland. Policy, it goes on and on. There's a few about being a leader on zero emission transport modes. You know, that we've heard that there are more and more young people in the city. We know that young people are not buying cars. We heard that this evening. If they're not buying cars, quite a few of them are riding bikes. It gives you a level of independence that public transport doesn't always give you. We know that at this point, the whole idea of what we're proposing with the MITs is to encourage, discourage car use, but also to encourage the understanding of how important public transport is and make sure that we get an increased level of public transport. But in the meantime, I think that considering the other goals of the MITs, we do need to make sure that we're encouraging bicycle transport. And so while I totally agree that accessible stops are crucial for everybody to be able to access public transport, I'm not able to support the officer's recommendation, and I will be supporting the amended recommendation for many and varied reasons which I've outlined.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Any others? Councillor Bolton.
I would like to speak in favour of this alternative resolution. I don't think we should pit one group of people against another group of people. I don't think that is very bad. I think we need disability accessible stops, and we need safe transport for people riding bikes, and especially now with poverty increasing, a lot of people are forced to get bikes, not just for environmental reasons, but also through lack of income, lack of being able to afford other forms of transport. And the report notes that there is low cycling on Nicholson Street, and I'm not really surprised there's low cycling on Nicholson Street compared to other routes because it is quite dangerous. And I think the Councillor Martin is trying to address that danger through this motion. And I think even where there is cycling infrastructure, it's at the spots where the cars and the bikes mingle that the accidents happen. So I think I'm going to support this resolution for those reasons.
Thank you. Any other speakers against the motion? Okay, if there's no speakers against, I'm going to go to the mover who wants to close the debate. Yep. 2 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you. So, in summary, what we have is some of my fellow councillors standing here saying that they want the best possible outcome for cyclists in our city. Yet they are happy for cyclists to be merged into traffic, risking their lives. We have a plan to mobilise active transport in our city. We are working on our biggest ever integrated transport system and strategy, and safety is one of our core responsibilities in our governance role. The fact is that we have 1,000% more cyclists than the average across the state. We have one of the highest number of commuter cyclists by suburb in the country, and we have a major road that does not consider 1 in 10 of those residents. And I fully support working together. I really would love to work together. If there was an alternative design here right now, I would be fully supportive of that, and I would be supportive of a design coming forward and coming back to the next council meeting so we can approve it as soon as possible, because I really would like to see these these strategies and see these super stops roll out as soon as possible. But we don't have an alternative design before us, and so we need to make the best decision on the information that's before us. And I believe at this point in time, this is the best decision that we can make for 1 in 10 of our residents in the south. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put Councillor Martin's alternative recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We're going back to the what's listed on the agenda in the order now. So we're going back to the second council report, which is DED 4718, multi-use community facility at 33 Saxon Street, Brunswick, concept plans endorsement for community consultation. Moved by Councillor Dorney. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Dorney, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I mean, this is another strategy. There's lots of exciting things in tonight's council agenda, and this is one of them. I think this is a huge asset for East Brunswick and the potential that this place-based approach to site works has. And I mean, the draft before us is really impressive. I love how officers have actually put 3 options to the community for conversation and discussion and thoughts around. I think in their own right, they all look great, and there's some key areas which cross them all. But I think it also, depending on which option, which A being the cheapest and C being the most expensive, is going to indicate how far we push with our advocacy plan around this, which Council endorsed at the last meeting. So I'm just, looking forward to getting out and hearing what people have to say about this strategy if it's endorsed tonight for public consultation.
Thank you. And the seconder is Councillor Tappanos.
Great, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak about Saxon Street because it was such a strategic purchase, and I know that it's going to be such a great community asset into the future. So we do need to get it right. We've had some community feedback, consultations, real engaging sessions, particularly during the Sydney Road Street Party. Now it's time to move that along to a more formalised and a more detailed consultation period. As you can see, councillors, from the report, there are a whole range of services, a whole range of different services that could occur on the site, and there is no doubt that each and every one of those would make a valuable contribution to our community and will be very much needed with our growing population. So I am not going to favour one over the other, or I'm looking forward to what the community may say and may tell us about Saxon Street and the hub and what it wants in the future. But just to say that I'm really pleased to keep seeing these reports in the chamber, keep seeing this good work occurring, and if anything, we need to speed it up and deliver this community hub as soon as we can, because our community needs these services now, not tomorrow, but now.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Being no further speakers, we're going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We move on now to DCI 2618, Public Lighting Policy Endorsement for Consultation. Moved by Councillor Davidson. Have a seconder? Councillor Yildiz. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Davidson?
Very briefly, this report was deferred from the last council meeting. The reason for its deferral was because there were some concerns around the possibility of lights being turned off in selected areas. The reason I was not agreeing to those recommendations was particularly in relation to safety, although I do recognise that there are concerns that council has involving vandalism and to deter and reduce that. I'm happy that that recommendation to turn the lights off has been removed, and the report in its substance is well considered to improve health and safety through our lighting works, support low energy LED lights, and provide quality lighting within our urban design. So on the whole, I'm very pleased with this report. I hope that my fellow councillors support it.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Yildiz, any other discussion on this report?
Sorry, I might be speaking too much tonight, but
I
just feel very briefly, once more, please tell us your view in regards to this piece of work. I note that a few years ago we changed the street lights to LED lights, and that had a huge impact. Not only were we getting greater carbon reductions and energy efficiency and saving money, but we had more brighter streets. So it was a win-win on many council fronts. And I note that there are areas in our city, and particularly some of our parks and community open space areas, that are still quite dark and they're not safe. And we need to do better as a council. And I think that this policy will go a long way towards doing that. I also like to note, if I can, Mr Mayor, to the officer, if I can announce that we are applying to the state government for a grant that would actually help us facilitate and speed up this process of installing LED lights in our parks and other open spaces. And I hope that we are successful in that, because we need to do better.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Any other speakers? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. DED 4818, Deliberative Development Research Paper, Council Action Plan item. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tapanos is moving, and are you seconding Councillor Callahan? With Councillor Callahan. Councillor Tapanos, would you like to speak to it?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, councillors, members of the gallery, we've all had presentations. We've seen some great work occur in our city around the deliberative development approach or model, which does bring the costs down and eliminates a lot of the marketing costs for developers, and therefore that saving is able to be passed on. I guess it is something that we as a council are interested in, but at this point in time, we're not ready to undertake a project or a pilot project. I guess I'm supportive of the officer's recommendation and happy to move this tonight, but I do so with sadness, and I do believe it's a policy area that we need to do more work on, and something that we can pursue in the future, and maybe even the Moreland Lands Trust could actually take this up and provide some advice and support about how we could get this off the ground in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Callahan?
So I rise in favour of the officer's recommendation, and I'm quite comfortable with not pursuing a deliberative development project. I do believe that the market is sufficiently catering for a diversity of development and models as well, and I would rather focus on affordable housing.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour and against? Declare that carried. Okay, we move to DCI 2718, Senior Citizens Groups Parking Response to General Business item. Moved by Councillor Aboud. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Aboud?
No, I don't think I need to speak to it.
Councillor Yildiz, any speakers? Being no speakers, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. DCS 4018, Progress Report on Council's Fossil Fuel Divestment Strategy and Next Steps. Response to General Business item. Councillor Bolton is on her feet.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation with an extra 0.7,
yes,
which was circulated earlier. So the 0.7 is receives a report on the transactional banking contract before the expiry of the current contract and before the tender process for a new contract is begun.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. It's clear. Do you have a seconder?
Can I just ask, through the CEO or through the Mayor, whether or not there's any confidentiality issues, whether or not that would have to be held in camera or anything like that?
Just through the Mayor, it depends on the detail of the report. It may need to be in camera, or it may need to have some detail in camera. So we would then work that out at the time.
Yeah, that's fine.
So do we have a seconder, Councillor? Yep, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bolton, would you like to speak to it?
My main reason for my original general business item and for moving this amendment to this report is that I was one of the original councillors, along with Councillor Thompson, who pushed the whole issue of fossil fuel divestment on council. And in pushing that, I believe that there would be some sort of report back to councillors before council went ahead and tendered for a new contractor. So I wasn't aware until after the contract had been awarded to Westpac, I think it was, another fossil fuel bank. So I want to prevent that happening again. I believe there may be some banks which may offer fossil fuel free services that may not have been contacted by council. Council may not have been aware of those services when this contract was issued. So yeah, I mean, I strongly support fossil fuel divestment. I know it's not the only thing that needs to be done, because council isn't in the business of buying shares and that sort of investment. So we can't like pull money out of investments. But this is mainly to do with transactions. You know, who we do our transactional banking with. But certainly, I think it is an important step, although not the be-all and end-all. And I certainly think we need to have some input prior to any new contract being tendered for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, I'd just like to rise to thank Councillor Bolton for actually putting this motion up originally, because it is something that we should all be aware of, and understanding that we can have these strategies in place, but there are significant limitations, especially around whether or not certain institutions decide to tender for your contracts. And so I think what we're seeing here is really the next step in our strategy. And also I'd like to thank the officers for their work to date on this. And I am also looking forward to seeing our investment strategy come back and really looking to divest as much as we can through that process also. So I thank Councillor Bolton for originally calling for this, and also thank the officers for their work in this space.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any further speakers on this? Being no further speakers, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We've got DCI 2818, Framework for Council Contribution towards the construction of unmade laneways.
I'd like to propose a procedure for a deferral.
Okay, Councillor Carly Hannon is proposing a deferral. We now need a seconder for deferrals. Councillor Farnley. Would you, and you have to say to the next meeting date, is that right?
Yes.
And you can speak to it your reasons why now.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, cool.
it's changed now since.
Yeah, that's right. So the report basically recommends that we maintain the status quo. And while I am still happy with the classifications that we have, I do not feel comfortable at this stage with the resident versus council responsibility, noting that the first one is activity centres and the second one is need for public use. I've actually spent today reading the proposed Local Government Act, which talks about the special purpose charge and the need for it to be residents that benefit and that they only pay the contribution of how much they benefit, and also looking at other councils and what they've done and the actual success rate of people picking up using the special purpose charge or whatever it will look like in the future. I just think we can't wait until 2021, so I would like the report next month to provide a more tangible solution.
Okay, thank you for the thorough explanation for your reason. Did you want to speak, Councillor Farnley? No, okay. All right, so I'm going to put the deferral to the vote, unless anyone wants to speak. All those in favour of the deferral till next month? Opposed? To declare that carried. So that comes back next month. Okay, the next report we have to consider is DCI 2918, proposed 2-hour parking restrictions in Cumming Street, Brunswick West, response to petition, moved by Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Abood, would you like to speak to it?
Just very briefly to say that I expect in a city that's, I don't know, between sort of 6 and 14k from the CBD, I think we'll probably see more and more 2-hour parking restriction zones occurring across the city, just to protect residents who live in the city, so that traders and everyone is getting what they need out of the parking spaces on the roads. So I'm very happy to support this restriction.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Yildiz, do you want to speak
All I
to
can
it?
say is I've had complaints from residents about people parking and using public transport. It's a good move.
Okay, any other speakers on this item? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We move on now to EMOD 318, Council Action Plan 2017-18, Performance Report fourth quarter, which is the 1st of April to the 30th of June 2018 cyclical report. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Abood. Seconded by Councillor Bolton. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Abood?
Just very briefly again to say that I'm really proud of my role as a councillor, and that pride is directly related to the amount of work that we're getting done. And I think, you know, although there might be some things that may look like they're not quite completed, I think we're doing a spectacular job, and I commend the officers and all of the staff in this huge establishment for everything that they do.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton? No. Any other speakers? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Move on now to DCS 4118, Governance Report for August 2018, Cyclical Report. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Carly Hannon. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dorney. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Carly Hannon? Councillor Dorney?
No.
No? Being any other speakers? Being no further speakers, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I think we move on to... Should we do the urgent business? Yeah. Yes. Norms, urgent business items. When do they... This. Yeah, we haven't got an item for urgent business items, I don't think. So should I do that now? Yeah.
Is that now rather than...
I'm not sure. Do we do the noms first? The noms first. Fine. Okay. No worries. I just wasn't sure. Okay, councillors, we now move on to notices of motion. Councillors, I ask that you start by stating your motion. If it's the one that's been circulated, that's fine. If it's a little bit different, please point it out. So the first one is Notice of Motion 3318, Achieving Zero Carbon Within the Planning Scheme. Councillor Martin has put forward this motion. Yes, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, so I would like to move the motion that I circulated to councillors last Tuesday. I note the only difference between this motion and that one is that there is an additional comma, which is annoying me after either solar photovoltaic. Could you just remove that comma? Thank you. So if I have a seconder, I'm happy to speak to the item.
It's a very major change there. It obviously changes the complexity greatly. All right, so a seconder, Councillor Dorney. Yes, go. You can speak to it, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. So firstly, I would like to thank my fellow councillors for bearing with me while I worked this up and sent this to them quite a few times. I also would really like to thank the members of the community who have since found out that I've been working on this motion and have reached out to really help shape it and give me suggestions and ideas on how to improve it. And so hence, through that process, we've removed solar thermal from that equation and left it as solar photovoltaic or a living roof. So really what this motion does is it recognises that we have rising emissions from energy, from waste and from transport. And it recognises that as a community, we can't wait for other levels of government to take action. We actually have to be the leaders in this space. One of the things that we know is that household energy costs account for about 12% of the household budget. At this very moment in time, we have 42,000 families across the country experiencing energy poverty. And that is, they cannot afford to turn the heating and cooling on. Almost all of these families are renters as well, and they can only select what is available on the market. So what this motion does is it seeks to roll out, it would impose a cost on developers of about 1% of the median cost of a home in Coburg. But what it would do in turn, the occupants would save 10 to 20% of their utility bills and their fuel costs every single year. So what we're doing is we're actually putting this in place to improve the housing stock across the city that will in turn benefit those people who are our most vulnerable in our community. And so for the few people in the gallery and for those at home, what this NOM is actually asking for is it's asking for 15% of all new residential and commercial buildings to have 15% of their roof space allocated to either solar panels or a green roof. And what you see there is you have the energy generation of a solar panel, or you have the thermal insulation of a green roof. I'd also like to just really quickly touch on the two other points, and that is ensuring that there is adequate bin storage space and waste chutes within the planning scheme to allow for source separation, and also installing the electrical infrastructure behind the wall, not installing an electric vehicle charger, but installing the cables behind the wall so that at a future point in time, somebody is able to install an electric vehicle charger. So I really would like to encourage my fellow councillors to please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thorne?
I rise to obviously support Councillor Martin's NOM. I think, again, which I feel like I do often, I'd like to commend Councillor Martin for his vision commitment to not only the residents of today, but the residents of future generations through something like this. I think my mind actually goes to, even though I wasn't present and I wasn't a resident of Moreland, but Mike Hill and his momentous policy initiative around recycling and bringing curbside recycling to Moreland. And I think that if this is supported tonight, this is something that we'll look back on that Councillor Martin initiated that has really paved the way for renewables and helping to create buildings where people can afford to turn on their energy bills, can live in comfortable buildings that are addressing climate change and all of the things that go with it that Councillor Martin has alluded to. I think the option of either having solar or green roofs creates a bit of flexibility within that while they both address the same things in a roundabout way. And I don't think I have anything else to say. Oh yes, I do have one more point. One other thing I'd like to allude to was how Councillor Martin has been very proactive in number 3 of the one of the recommendations around looking at bringing other councils on board with this and looking at the likes of Northern Alliance for Greenhouse Northern Alliance Greenhouse Action. NAGA on board. But the fact that, if this gets through tonight, this has potential to, spread its tentacles all across Victoria, across Australia, and huge potential. Really like to thank Councillor Martin and really look forward to Councillor's support on this.
Councillor Yildiz.
People are going to think that I'm turning into a greenie, Dale. I'll just read what I said in the previous motion. You had macro, good planning, a great NOM, environmental benefits, financial benefits. This is not, again, just a greenie thing. I think greenie initiative. I think this is a great NOM you put forward, mate. And I had a chat with you earlier today. Have read most of it, and I'd have to say pretty much all of it. Did read it, and I'm really, really impressed with yet another good achievement. I just hope we get it up.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Abood.
Yes, so I represent a ward where we see some pretty low quality developments happening in the city. Badly made properties with limited insulation, and often a scenario where the bedrooms are upstairs and they all need to be serviced by reverse cycle air conditioners. And pretty much every single time those dwellings, the application doesn't involve solar panels on the roof. And the north end of the city is not as wealthy as the south end of the city, and the living expenses are very high when you're living in a scenario where you can't sleep in your bedroom because as the summers are warmer and warmer, and we know what's happening in Europe now, so we can probably expect a pretty hot summer this year, you can't sleep upstairs in one of those new developments without an air conditioner on, and it costs a lot of money to run an air conditioner. There's also another scenario where at the moment we're hearing stories about old people in the community who are having to heat their whole big house through ducted heating. And I think that better access to these kind of technologies, and especially if we can build it into the structure, to the planning structure, will mean that people will never be faced with a scenario where they're running gas ducted heating for a whole house at like $1,000 a quarter for their bills, when they could potentially be having a solar panel which would heat a good quality, fuel efficient electric heater and give them the same level of comfort. So I would say, considering the kind of council we are, we could say rates, roads, rubbish and renewables. And if we need to wait for the planning minister to get on board, that's okay. We've got a long history of being pioneers and we're prepared to wait, and we're prepared to, just put these ideas forward and just hope that they will be adopted at some point with a view to the economic and environmental value that they provide. So I commend Councillor Martin on his notice of motion, and I'm very happy to support it.
Okay, councillors, any councillor speaking against? No, okay, Councillor Tapanos.
Difficult to speak against this one because effectively it is calling for a report. And before I do so, I'll commend Councillor.
If it's so difficult, why? It doesn't matter.
But I want to put something on the record, Mr. Mayor. I will begin by commending Councillor Dale Martin on the vision here. It is one that I share, and it will be great to actually see some planning outcomes here. However, I don't think this is the right approach. The Deputy Mayor spoke about the north of our municipality. Well, I could speak about the south, but I could speak about the adjoining municipalities. This is a statewide, it should be a statewide initiative, not a Moreland initiative. If it's good for us here around sustainability, it's good for residents in the east and the west and in regional Victoria. It is a state policy matter. I fear that if we pursue, this is an amendment to the planning scheme in Moreland is not the way to go. It is an advocacy campaign that should occur to implement this across Victoria. I feel that the heavy lifting will be done by Moreland, and I would assume that there would be significant resources required to go into this, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it won't get anywhere unless it is done on a state level. So I commend vision, and quite often I think we need to be speaking forward, but as a council we also need to be prudent with our budget and our resources, and sometimes less is actually more. And if we can put those resources in the department and that money that's needed to prepare an amendment that's probably not going to get support, to actually implementing the policies around sustainability, the compliance around sustainability that we actually have, and we have many because we've been doing this for 20 years. We have great policies in place. We can build on those and we can implement those and achieve better outcomes, whilst at the same time we can advocate for this. If we continue down the path of attempting to amend this, amending our planning scheme, attempting to go through that bureaucratic process, which will take years and will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think it's not the right approach. It's not going to be the most effective approach, and a statewide collaborative effort is the way to go, councillors. For that reason, and that reason alone, I am struggling to say I'm not supporting this, but I must be consistent and say it's not a good motion at this point in time.
Thank you, councillor. Apologies for interrupting
That's all right.
at the beginning.
You should have given me a few seconds extra.
You can take them if you like.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Speaking in favour?
Yes.
Yep.
I'll just speak really briefly, just to the point that was raised by Councillor Tapanos. I think, yes, advocacy is important, and I've moved motions for advocacy to state government in the past. But one of the things I think Moreland has achieved, and sometimes other councils, sometimes Moreland might be in the lead, sometimes other councils might be in the lead, but I think this is where I think local council can play an important role, because by taking some initiatives and encouraging other councils to also take initiatives, sometimes you can create a bit of groundswell that forces the state government to take an initiative. And I think that's a really important role that local councils can play, because in a sense, doing something like this is part of advocacy. We obviously have to do that advocacy side as well, but this, in a sense, actually gives some muscle to that actual advocacy. So I'm certainly supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Are there any other speakers? The mover has the right to reply for 2 minutes.
Thank you. So, I completely agree with Councillor Tapanos. This should be a statewide scheme. This should be a national scheme. This should be rolled out everywhere across the country tomorrow. The problem is that we do not have the political conviction at state and federal levels to allow this to happen. What we have to do is Moreland has to lead the way to fill that gap in political conviction. Yes, any planning scheme amendment is a lengthy, costly exercise, but this is people who are vulnerable in our community that need our assistance. And if we were never going to try something because it was potentially costly or lengthy, and ignore those people in our community, then that's not a council that I want to be part of. What point 3 does is it gives officers time to speak with other councils and to speak with Casby and Naga to reduce the financial burden on council and to grow that groundswell. What I've experienced is I put out a survey on my Facebook page and it came back that 94% of people supported this planning scheme amendment. I've had council officers and councillors in more than 5 other councils reach out to me and ask me what would be the next steps of this process after, if you guys were successful in passing this. This is not just an idea that has come out of thin air. It's based on solid, proven evidence and legislation internationally that we need to bring into Australia, and the way that we do that is right now in this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we're going to put that to the vote now. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, Councillor Martin has called a division, so...
Just note I was against.
Okay, well, we better do it officially, I think, but we better do it officially, I think. All right, those who are in favour, please raise their hand again and keep it there. As I call them, Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Martin, Councillor Farnley, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Abood, Councillor Thorne, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Carly Hannon, and Councillor Bolton, and against Councillor Tapanos. Thank you. Next notice of motion is notice of motion 3418, rough sleeping. Councillor Bolton.
This is me, but or my motion, but I'm moving a slightly amended motion with the same intent,
yes,
but a bit improved motion, which is one: the council consults the state government and local community service and health providers regarding the services and support available in Central Coburg for people experiencing homelessness, in particular to investigate potential partners to provide a drop-in shelter which provides access to showers and lockers to temporarily store belongings. 2, receive a briefing on the outcomes of the consultation process, including options for improving access to appropriate services and support for people experiencing homelessness. And 3, participates with other local councils in the next street count to collect information about people sleeping rough in parks, on streets and in other locations, so that council and other organisations can better plan support services for homeless people.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Abood. You may speak to it, Councillor Bolton.
So I'm moving this motion not because this is a solution to the homeless crisis, but because it is a way of sort of making life a little better for people who, not only people who are sleeping rough, but people who are out in public and lack an income to be able to sit at a cafe where you have to pay $4 or $5 for a cup of coffee. The issue of homelessness and rough sleeping is only going to get worse in Australia and in Melbourne and in Moreland until there is a decisive shift by governments to build substantially more public housing. But meanwhile, I think, and this motion also doesn't address the total shortage of transitional housing. A lot of homeless workers say that a lot of councils and other organisations believe that when people come across people who are sleeping rough, that there's all this transitional housing that's available to people. Well, actually, there's not. or else if it is, people get something briefly for maybe a week or a motel for a week, and then they're back on the streets, and they actually have to pay rent for that transitional accommodation of a couple $200 or $300 a week. So out of a New Start allowance or maybe out of no money at all. There is, I think this is an issue in Moreland because at the moment the only facility we can offer people who are low on income or rough sleeping is the Coburg Library, which is a great facility, and I think it's good that we do offer that facility. It has become a community hub. But I also fear that the library is becoming overcrowded as there are more demands on the library, both it's the shelter when there is extreme heat waves as well as a shelter for people who are suffering homelessness. So I think we need to investigate how we can support people in partnership with other levels of government and other organisations to provide support for people who are homeless. And I believe there needs to be some sort of drop-in centre in Coburg that's not faith-based, because not everyone wants to go to a faith-based organisation, especially in the light of the sexual abuse scandals coming out of the Royal Commission into sexual abuse of children in institutions, many of which are religious. But it's, so I'll just finish on this point, that the need for this drop-in centre would be to provide lockers so that people don't have to drag all of their possessions around with them, as well as access to showers and so forth. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Abood?
Yes, I would like to commend this motion that Councillor Bolton has submitted, and I'm quite... I didn't need to think twice about whether to support it or not. As long as we're seeing the level of gentrification that we are seeing with places like the Gatwick Hotel become the subject of a TV show, which kind of deprioritises everything that we've accepted in our human rights policy. And as the councillor the chairperson of the Human Rights Committee and Moreland City Council, I feel that I am the right person to support this motion, and I think that it will be quite revealing for us when we do the third part of the motion to hear who in fact is actually sleeping rough. And I was quite surprised when Councillor Bolton told me that 22% of homeless people are actually employed. So when a woman said to me recently, when we were looking at the new toilet block that's going up outside the Coburg Library, why didn't they put a shower in it? It was like an epiphany, and I remember feeling like, wow, imagine even having to think about something like that. I don't even bat an eyelid apart from collecting some water out of the bottom every time I go in and have a shower. I just don't need to even think about it. And I think that part of what's happening with this increased, broadening gap between people who have and people who have not is that some of the stuff that we're taking for granted, when it's provided, really ease the pressure on people who are living rough, and that being provided a meal, without having to think about where it's coming from, and being able to have a shower and being able to drop your stuff somewhere in a locker so that you can go and walk around without all your worldly belongings attached to your body is something that we all need to think about. I think there's a grim misunderstanding about what homeless people or people who are sleeping rough are all about, and what that can lead to in a worst case scenario. And I think that the more that we can really try and appreciate what we have and try and help people have the stuff that they need, the better off all of us will be in the community. So I commend the motion, and I'm really happy to second it.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion on this? Being no further discussion, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
Can that be declared unanimous?
Well, happy to declare that unanimous. Okay, now before we move on to foreshadowed items, Councillor Bolton had suggested early on about an urgent business item regarding Pepper Tree Place. So could I have a motion to include that, if you so desire, to include that in the agenda? Right. Moved by Councillor Bolton, seconded by Councillor Yildiz. All right? Yeah.
Or is it written there? My understanding is to move an urgent business motion, you must reference why it's urgent in accordance with the sections.
Okay. Under our local laws, the CEO has the first call on that. Oh, anyway, would you like to explain that, CEO?
First, I understood that was the decision that was just being moved, was whether or not to admit it.
So basically, it was submitted as a potential urgent business item. It did meet the issue around urgency because it's a 6 week.
Motion to include it?
You do need a motion to include it. So from a procedural perspective for the councillor, your first vote is whether you include it as urgent business. From a procedural perspective, there's enough to say there is some urgency to this. It's genuine. There's a genuine urgency. It's also not business as usual for the officers to be able to do, so it would require a resolution. And on that basis, I guess my recommendation to you is that it appears to meet the criteria, but then it's your decision about whether you admit it as general business. So that's your first vote.
My point is related to, in the resolution, which will go before the chamber, I think the resolution needs to meet the sections of the Act as to why it's urgent. Not just say it is urgent, but why it's urgent.
Yeah, so our local law that.
The part that I'm highlighting now is the part that is attempting to address what you've been saying.
Okay, yeah. So what's been highlighted there is cannot be addressed through operational service request, and not considering it tonight will mean it's too late for council. Okay, you happy with that? All right, so we've got a mover as Councillor Bolton and a seconder by Councillor Yildiz. So this is not for the actual motion, this is simply to include it as urgent business. Everyone clear? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour to include it? Against? Okay, declare that carried. Right, now Councillor Bolton, would you like to move your... No, it's not.
No,
not yet.
No. So this is quite a simple motion. So it is simply to note the important role of Pepper Tree Place to the local community to support the tenants and volunteers to find a way to save Pepper Tree through the provision of meeting room space and through some officer assistance in identifying auspicing organisations over the coming 6 weeks.
Okay, thank you. I think that's pretty clear. That's moved by Councillor Bolton and seconded by Councillor Abood. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, I would really like to speak to it to explain why I'm moving this motion. I think all or most councillors will be familiar with Pepper Tree Place, just over here on the corner of Urquhart Street and Sydney Road. It's a venue, I don't swear to know all of the history of it. It's owned by the Uniting Church, but was run by the Uniting Care Wing of the church, which is a separate entity. There is a nursery there. There are around 100 volunteers, all sorts of different programs, integration kind of programs. It's also the Coburg Information Service that provides emergency relief is also based in the cottage there. So for the last couple of years, the Pepper Tree Place has been under a bit of a cloud. And I think a lot of people say that Pepper Tree Place is very unusual. I mean, as far as I know, it's totally unique. It's quite different to any other community garden. It is sort of like a place of respite from the world. It's a public place, so it's not just like any community garden. It's lots of people visiting and coming into the place. It had a cafe, which has been closed down by Uniting. And I think it was, I'm not sure of all of the history of the origin of it, but it has been a very communal place with a lot of classes and volunteers and so forth. It's come to light that the Uniting had indicated that there was funding available till November. Now they've announced to the volunteers today that they need to close Pepper Tree Place within 6 weeks. And while it's not been stated, it appears that it is with a view to selling the site, but we don't know that for sure. That's speculation. There's now a community campaign to save Pepper Tree Place, where people are looking at the possibility of independently running Pepper Tree Place if they can find an auspicing organisation and if the Uniting Church agrees not to sell the land. And I think given the plans for the scale of development in Pentridge with all these high-rise of several 19-storey and other incredibly high buildings, the highest in Moreland, to not have Pepper Tree Place is, to lose Pepper Tree Place would be a massive loss for the community. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Abood.
The history is a little bit hazy, and certainly what's going on now is very hazy. But one thing that is incredibly clear is the support that Pepper Tree Place has from the community. There's some really passionate people that have been touched by this place, and it's been somewhere for hundreds of volunteers. The school's been involved. It's quite a unique garden. It's been the home of a community compost hub and food swap. And I think that it's such an obvious thing that we just send a signal that we will do what we can in terms of helping to support the campaign and the local community to try and get some answers and potentially find somebody who can umbrella that the house, the garden. I think it's quite important, and so I have no hesitation again supporting this notice of business item.
Councillor Yildiz.
Can I also mention one thing that wasn't mentioned was the fact that the Pepper Tree Place provides an opportunity for the school right next door to pretty much gain free access, and also the school across the road. So Kavanagh Primary School having two campuses. But as you mentioned, Councillor Abood, in terms of composting, that's on the facility which we in fact are engaged with. Council provide the composting bins there. So it's providing a much needed space for the community, in particular Pentridge Village. Now my sister has been there many times, and my family have been there. I'm just saddened to hear that it might, from what I've been hearing the last month or so, was that this was on the cards and it was going to happen regardless. But my question is this: can council potentially offer Pepper Tree a place that they could move to? Because if this does happen, I think Uniting are making definitely a bad decision, but I'm not sure what they're going to do with the site because they haven't indicated whether they're going to sell it to a developer. But it really is a vital piece of community land there. Well, it's not community stand, but it provides an opportunity for the community. But one thing I wanted to say, I forgot, but you said 100 volunteers. There's only one really paid staff member there, and they're very, very welcoming. And the prices of their plants are anywhere from $3 right up to about $10. So I'd be really sad to see them gone. And for the councillors that haven't been, it's literally only a stone's throw away from here. And I'd encourage you to please go onto their Facebook page, say Pepper Tree Place, and like it and make comments on there.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Any other speakers on this?
Yeah, just briefly.
Yes, Councillor Thorne.
I also rise to support Councillor Bolton's urgent business item. I think that I agree this place it's an absolute gem in the city of Coburg, and it's a place that has run on a shoestring for as long as I've known it, but been able to really have some really strong impact in the community, particularly as Councillor Yildiz alluded to, around the students being able to access that space as well, and have access to education and opportunity to learn how to grow and compost their own food. And the fact that it's run on a shoestring, I mean, I don't know what the options or the possibilities are. I like the idea of council pushing and supporting the community in seeing what is possible, but I think with the right auspice and the right investment that this place really could thrive and have, you know, really good staffing investment where they can, you know, dedicate more time to supporting volunteers and having a really thriving enterprise there. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, I haven't.
No, we've done the urgency. That's the actual motion now. Yeah.
Just something.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Yep.
An urgent thing. I'll need to hand over the moving of the motion to someone else.
Okay.
Because I rent part-time a room in
Right,
the
okay,
retreat.
all right.
I didn't even think about this, so if I
Just
could.
stop. Yeah.
So I'll have to declare
Hang on, we'll
conflict
just
of interest.
We'll just hear from the CEO.
Yep, sorry, I just want to stop it for a second, if that's okay. If you have a conflict, then what you'll need to do is leave the chamber for that.
Yep.
It would be best to withdraw your motion and leave the chamber if there is another councillor willing to move it,
Right.
but that
Okay,
you'll
just
need
stop
to
the
be out
vote.
of the chamber before it
All
gets
right,
over.
okay, all right, we'll do that. Okay, so Councillor Aboud, are you willing to be the mover?
And I'm happy to second, John.
And Councillor Yildiz will be the seconder. Happy with that? Okay. All right. Are we clear, councillors? Right. We'll just wait till. Yeah. Okay. Yes, okay. All right, so we'll go back to the start. Sorry, before we do the motion, we'll have to go back and Councillor Aboud, would you like to move whether it be considered as urgent business?
Yes, please.
Okay. Who would like to second as to whether it be considered as urgent business? I've got Councillor Dorney there. I'll take you for that one, Councillor. All right, so we're going to vote on whether it be considered as urgent business. Sorry?
I want to speak to the motion.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
got
Okay, yeah, no, that's right.
Is it
Yeah.
urgent or we need to vote on that?
That's what he wants
You
to
want to
speak
speak
to.
about whether it be admitted as urgent business? Yeah, okay, you may.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. I do recognise that there's a lot of information that is coming across quite quickly in regards to this matter today, in fact. And no doubt council officers, as it's done for many other community organisations, should be talking to people and facilitating what we can do to help. I really don't think it needs a motion. I don't think it's urgent. I think this work could be done by the organisation. And I suspect that there's probably discussions that will be occurring regardless of what occurs here. But to actually have an urgency motion debated in the chamber is been used in the past for items that are really urgent, that really need big decisions today. I mean, what's been proposed is a meeting space and talking to them. Come off and do it. Why do we need a motion?
Okay, I'm going to speak as to why I think the motion should be added to the agenda. I think it should be added to the agenda because at the moment the officers don't have that guidance. They don't have any guidance from council about this issue at all. We know that it's up to 6 weeks. It is possible that the place could be closed down by the time of the next council meeting. Certainly major decisions being made very quickly. I mentioned before that Councillor Aboud and myself met with people connected with Pepper Tree Place, and at that point they thought they had many, many months of existence to go, and we find out today that it's a 6-week thing. So also it's already been through the first hurdle when the Chief Executive Officer has formed the view that it is urgent and it can't be left to be dealt with, and I'm supportive of that view and I believe it should be added to the agenda. Councillor
As I'm putting that the item being moved as urgent or considered as an urgent business item, I just would like to draw attention to the meeting procedure local law which we adopted what feels like recently. And in that context, it states that A, it relates to or arises out of a matter which has arisen since the distribution of the agenda, which is certainly the case. We didn't know what we know about Pepper Tree Place until today. I didn't know until 3 o'clock this afternoon. B, deferring the item until the next meeting will mean a decision on the item will not have any effect on the matter, which is potentially the case. Like the Mayor has just outlined, this could be, it's moving very quickly and there's not a lot of clarity around what's going on. B, C, the scenario with the CEO has already been ticked off as one of the conditions. And D, it cannot be addressed through an operational service request process. So I think that when we're looking at it as if it is an urgent business item, there's just no denying that it is, and I would encourage other councillors to support that. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other discussion on whether it be added to the agenda? There being no discussion, we're going to vote on whether it be added to the agenda. I'm going to vote on that now. All those in favour of it being added to the agenda? All those opposed? Okay, declare that carried. All right, now we move on to the actual item, and the item as outlined before remains, and Councillor Abood is moving that.
Yep.
In the same way in the same words as previously, right?
Would you like me to read it or?
No, I think we're clear.
Okay.
And Councillor Yildiz, you're happy to second that, is that correct? Right, is there any discussion on the item? Okay, we're going to put the vote to the actual item. So we've added to the agenda. This is actually on the item. We're going to put that now. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
Can we have that marked as unanimous?
Was it unanimous? Yeah. Yeah, it was. So, okay, I'm going to mark it unanimous. Sorry. Okay. All right, now, councillors, before we move on to foreshadowed items. So, councillors, if you could give a brief outline, if you've got a foreshadowed item that you think may be included, you might be going to include in the September council meeting. I think Councillor Farnley, you had one, did you? Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Farnley?
Thank you, Mayor. I've checked with governance. I actually will be an apology at the next council meeting, but I've checked with governance that you are still able to move a nom.
Yeah.
And someone else is able to take that nom and move it.
Okay.
And given that I'm calling for a report, I'd rather we proceed with that, because the report will, if adopted, will come back in a number of months. Just quickly regarding the actual nom, a resident reached out to the North East Ward councillors regarding safety concerns on accessing their home, which is off a laneway. Their entrance to their home is right on the laneway. There's no footpath, it's right on the laneway. So given the topical discussion regarding Page Street, I think it's quite appropriate that we receive a report into safety concerns for that resident. It struck a chord with me because I do remember actually letterboxing those units, those townhouses, and I can't remember any other townhouses anywhere in North East Ward where someone's front door actually accesses right onto a road. So it is a bit abnormal. Usually, you've got a footpath or you've got some sort of barrier, but in this instance, you actually step out onto the road. So I understand that the resident has been working with our city infrastructure team on looking at potentially some signage that hasn't been able to come to fruition due to the width of the road. And the residents done the right thing, given that there's no outcome. They've come to the councillors for some further support. So at this stage, I would call for councillors to accept a report into this. Yes, there may be some cost or some officer time to look into it, but it's really important that we take a look at the full facts and then make a decision later this year as to whether we want to pursue some traffic calming measures.
Thank you, Councillor. So, in essence, you're foreshadowing that's going to be put up at the September meeting, and we'll look at it then. All right, that's excellent. Any other foreshadowed items? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, so I'd just like to foreshadow that I did have an additional item that I was going to include in my notice of motion tonight, but I chose not to because it wasn't directly related to a planning scheme amendment. And that is exploring with council and with MEFL the potential for a trial rebate program within council. And to explain that program, when you connect gas to your home, the gas companies will often do it for free. If you choose to disconnect, they charge you quite a hefty service fee, and that can be $1,000, $2,000 to disconnect, but they offer you the free connection. What we're seeing in the city is a growing number of people choosing to disconnect from gas, but it is quite a costly exercise. And so what I'll be asking for is an investigative process around whether or not there is any demand to run a small trial program capped at, say, $5,000 or $10,000 for a small percentage to encourage more people to disconnect from gas.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Any other foreshadowed items? Okay, so that concludes foreshadowed items. Could I have a motion to close the council meeting to the public in accordance with section 89(2) of the Local Government Act? Moved by Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Davidson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I now can declare the council meeting closed to the public. I'd like to thank the gallery attendees and also thank those watching live streaming for your interest in council matters. And I wish you all a good night. And saying that, councillors, we're going to have a 5-minute recess, all right? And we're going to move with confidential items.